Hey everyone, it's Chewing Gum Freak, aka Alice. Welcome to another GRE video. I am super glad to see you. So today we're actually going to be talking about the quantitative portion of the GRE. I know it's probably nobody's favorite, but it's definitely a really important section. If you don't know, I was able to get a 170 perfect score on the first GRE that I took. So today I'm going to be going over a few tips that should be able to help you do the same. Let's get started. Now, before I get into all of the tips that I have for you, I just want to let you know that I'm doing something special during the COVID quarantine era that we're going through right now. And down below in the pinned comment, I will leave a link where you can sign up to talk with me for 30 minutes one-on-one about anything related to the GRE. I can't promise that I'm going to know everything related to all of the content, but if you're looking for advice, study tips, if you just need someone to help you navigate the ridiculous world of the GRE, let me know when you talk to me. If you're watching this video in the future, you'll be able to see in the pinned comment whether or not I'm still doing this. Before I get into really concrete tips, I want to start off by saying that you would expect the quantitative portion of the GRE to be super technical because, well, that's usually what math is, right? But the GRE throws you off a little bit by not doing that, which is both a good and a bad thing. Instead of having to memorize 100 different formulas in 100 different ways and being able to navigate a ridiculously complex calculator, the GRE doesn't require any of that. Instead, it really tests whether or not you're able to think critically and clearly on sort of a theoretical level about math. Even if you're a math major, if you have a really good background in the subject, going through a book or some sort of materials that walk you through sample questions will be very, very important. And in that sense, if you are more of a liberal arts major, you can think of this type of math as more of liberal artsy math, which I think would help you out when you're approaching everything. And I will say my favorite tip is actually going to be the last one I share. Sorry, it's YouTube, I have to do that, but I promise you it will be worth it. So let's jump in. A really great tip that I want you to know is when you get to the quant portion, you want to take your scratch paper and write down the formulas that you can remember. Now, I'll make a video in the future about different formulas that you definitely need to memorize, but you will not get any type of formula sheet or any tips about what formulas to use on the test. So a great thing to help keep your thoughts straight and to make sure that you don't forget all of those formulas is write them down as soon as you get the paper so you don't have to worry about them. Now, along with this, when you're looking at each of the questions, you want to make sure you read them very carefully. This actually saves you a lot of time. It's that whole idea of investing in the future, which is something I strongly recommend. But making sure you read the entire question before you get started on anything ensures that you, one, know what kind of answer they're looking for. It's entirely possible that you don't actually have to solve for X, you don't actually have to solve for Y, and you're going to be able to save a ton of time by looking at that first. So I have an example question here on the screen, and you can see it's a fairly simple question. X plus 4y equals 5, 4x plus y equals 20, but instead of asking for X and Y separately, it's asking for finding the average of X and Y. Now, without having to do any real calculations, you can easily see that X plus Y equals 5. So the average of the two would just be 5 over 2. So that's a relatively simple question. Hopefully that's not too difficult, but you can see that you don't even have to solve for X and Y in this case. Making sure that you read all of the instructions is going to save you a lot of time. The other thing you want to do is really watch your units. This can be a huge thing, and classic examples are converting kilometers per hour to meters per second or something like that. You're not going to be asked something like converting kilometers to miles because, let's be real, you would probably just look that up on Google in real life, and the conversion units are not that simple. Now, I mentioned this before, but time can definitely be an issue in this section. especially if you're not a great math person. Now, you do have 35 minutes per section, and you really need to figure out if you are the type of person who has a lot of time left over or doesn't have any time at all, and switch your testing strategy to match that. A lot of people are either the type of people who have 10 minutes left over or 10 questions left over by the end. So you need to figure out who you are and where you are on that spectrum, so you understand if you need to slow down and spend some more time reading each question so you don't make mistakes, or if you need to be the person who looks for the question and tries the first thing that comes to mind because you don't have any time. This can take a lot of practice, but simulate that testing environment once you're ready and just pay attention to time. Always take that into account so you understand where you stand when you're taking the test. If you're the type of person who typically has a lot of questions left over, or you're really stressed out for time by the end, you want to use your time really wisely. And one really good way to do this is just to mark down the questions that are really difficult or that you don't know how to solve right then and there when you read them. Instead of spending 3 minutes or something like that looking at the question, try to do something like spend 10 seconds looking at the question and trying to think of how to solve it. And if in that 10 seconds nothing comes to mind, or you don't know the formula that you're supposed to use, just move on. It is not worth it to spend extra time sitting there because you could be reading other questions that might actually trigger something in your memory and help you answer that previous question. Don't ever sit idly by, especially if you're somebody who runs out of time. Now, along with that, you will have access to a really basic function calculator. This is the same calculator that you can find if you pull up the calculator function on your laptop or on your iPhone, for example. Just note that it does have an extra square root function, which the iPhone doesn't have. It also has a lot of memory functions, but unless you're really familiar with how to use these, they're really not that necessary. The only thing you want to remember about doing calculator calculations is that you may need to pay attention to rounding, especially if you're doing a free response question. You don't want to round by 10% every time and then end up with an answer that is totally different from what it's supposed to be. But in that sense, while you're doing practice problems, just make sure you understand how to solve all of them without using variables, without using graphing functions and things like that. You really shouldn't be using those extra functions anyways. Now, the next thing I have to talk about is graphs, and these really make up a huge part of the GRE Quant section, unfortunately. When it comes to graphs, a lot of times the graphs that you see on the test itself are not going to be to scale. What that means is that what the picture looks like on the page might not actually be what the real figure looks like. So because of that, you really want to get familiar with actually drawing your own figures, and getting everything super accurate is not that important. Although if you are a super visual learner, I would recommend just doing some more drawing practice to get more familiar with getting things accurately. But the way that you want to use graphs is just to help you answer the question and visualize what it is that you're looking for. So a really good thing to remember here is that the amount of paper that you have and pencils is completely unlimited. So if you're somebody who messes up a lot, does a lot of drawing, does a lot of writing, make sure to ask for a lot. But don't be afraid to draw any kind of diagram that you think is the way that it's supposed to look like, and cross it out if it's not. Now, when you're actually making graphs, there are a few things that you can think about. So I mentioned accuracy before, and graphs really don't have to be that accurate. There are times when you might be comparing two values and one is 60 degrees and the other one is 61 degrees. Now, drawing by hand or even with a protractor is not going to let your eye really see a difference. But if you exaggerate one of those pictures, you can see clearly the difference between a larger angle and a smaller angle. So again, that is really to help you visualize the question and not really about figuring out specific details. through your graph. Now, a good rule of thumb as well is to break down shapes or think about area in a different way. So let's say you have a shape that looks something like this. So instead of trying to rack your brain around how you're gonna look for the area of this weird shape, what you can do is draw a few lines in it, and that helps you see that, oh, it's actually just made up of a square and a rectangle and a triangle and a half circle or something like that. That really makes it way easier for you to understand how to calculate the area. Going along with that, another type of area calculation can be something like this, where you're looking for the negative space, quote unquote, which is basically this idea that it's easier to calculate the area of the outside square and the inside circle. And to find that negative space, you're looking to subtract the area of those two things. In that case, it really comes down to understanding patterns of questions, seeing a few of these questions over and over so you understand how to approach it, but seeing a graph can really help you figure out what your next step is going to be. My second to last tip is going to be make a list. Now, this tip is a little bit conditional depending on if you're somebody who usually has a lot of time left over or doesn't, because it can take a long time. These questions work really well when you have something like, how many prime numbers exist between 5 and 20? Or how many times does the number 3 exist between the numbers 1 and 100? There are definitely more theoretical ways to go about this, but a lot of times just writing down all of the numbers is gonna be your best bet. In this case, it doesn't really help you to write down every single number from 5 to 20, for example, but you can walk yourself through all of those numbers and write down each of the ones that are prime. So 5, yes; 6, no; 7, yes; 8, no; 9, no; 10, no, etc., etc. Now, if it's something super complex, you really want to slow down and see if you can start finding patterns between every single thing. So if you're looking at the number of 3s, for example, you can know that between 1 and 10, you're going to have 1 3. Between 11 and 20, you're going to have 1 3. And then the only time you really want to make sure that you count the extra 3s is between 30 and 39, during which you're going to have 11 3s. Understanding those patterns by writing things down is also gonna save you some time. And now on to my favorite super simple tip. This is almost a no-brainer, but it bears repeating, is that when you work through different questions, make sure you write things down on your scratch paper, and by the time you finish the question, draw a box around what you've written for that question and label the question in the corner. Now, this is super helpful for a lot of reasons. Number one, obviously your work is a lot more compact, it's a lot more organized, it's much easier to find, especially if you're flipping through questions or you're going back and checking your work. It's also super good to help you realize if you've messed up, since you can follow all the work that you've done very clearly. And the best reason is that if you've skipped a question before and you need to go back and reference the work that you've done for another question, it is super easy to find. And also, it takes 2 seconds to draw a circle or a box around the work that you've done for a particular question and just write the number above it. Also reduces a lot of stress when I'm looking at a bunch of numbers, a bunch of formulas, graphs, whatever it is. All right, I am at the end of all my tips. I will put them all on screen here right now for you to grab a screenshot. I hope these were super helpful for you, and I will continue to make GRE videos as long as all of you love them. So let me know in the comments down below if there's anything I missed or if you have your own tips tips too. Don't forget, I would love to see you all in a one-on-one meeting. Like and subscribe to my channel so you can see more of my videos. And I really appreciate your feedback or anything great that you have to share, so feel free to keep in touch. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Bye!